The shuttle from Earth came out of hyperspace near station on a cold morning by Galactic Standard Time. Inside the shuttle, 12 humans sat in silence. They had traveled for 3 weeks through the darkness between stars. Now they could see the station through the small windows. It was massive. It looked like a metal city floating in space. Sat near the back of the shuttle. She was 24 years old with black hair tied back in a simple knot. Her face showed no emotion as she watched the station grow larger. She was small compared to the other humans. She stood only 5'3" and weighed perhaps 50 kilograms. Some of the male recruits had made jokes about her size during the journey. She had not responded to any of them. Next to her sat. He was a quiet man who spent most of his time reading old books on his. He rarely spoke unless someone asked him a direct question. On his other side sat a woman who had worked as an emergency medic on Earth before joining the galactic military program. She had kind eyes but nervous hands that never seemed to stay still. The shuttle docked at Base 17 with a loud metal sound. The doors opened and cold air rushed in. The humans grabbed their small bags and walked out in a single line as they had been trained to do. The docking bay was enormous. Ships of all sizes filled the space. Aliens of many different species walked past without looking at the humans. Some were tall and thin with blue skin. Others were short and wide with many arms. A few floated instead of walking. The humans tried not to stare, but it was difficult. Most of them had never seen an alien in person before. A figure stood waiting for them at the end of the bay. He was 8 feet tall with a body covered in hard plates that looked like dark armor. His eyes were small and black. His mouth was a thin line that did not seem designed for smiling. This was Senior Instructor of the species. Had trained warriors at the Galactic Military Academy for 40 years. He had broken recruits from dozens of different worlds. He was proud of his record. Not a single species had ever completed his training without at least half of them quitting or failing. He believed this made him excellent at his job. He looked at the humans with obvious disgust. He had read the reports about Earth, a Class 12 with heavy gravity, dangerous weather, and millions of predator species. The reports said humans were tough because of this. Did not believe the reports. He had seen tough species before. He had broken all of them. His eyes stopped on. She was the smallest of the group. She looked like a child compared to some of the aliens on the station. Made a note in his priority target. Psychological breakdown expected within 1 cycle. He would start with her. When the smallest one broke, the others would follow. The humans stood in a line before him. None of them spoke. They had been told that speaking without permission was forbidden. Walked slowly in front of them. His heavy footsteps echoed in the bay. He stopped before each human and stared at them. Most of them looked away from his gaze. When he stopped in front of, she did not look away. She stared directly at his chest since his eyes were too high for comfortable eye contact. This annoyed, but he said nothing about it. "You will address me as Instructor," he announced. His voice was deep and harsh like rocks grinding together. "You will not speak unless spoken to. You will not question my orders. You will not complain. You will obey or you will break. Those are your only choices." None of the humans responded. This was correct behavior. Assign them to their barracks. Most of the humans were placed in Barracks 3, which had reasonable temperatures and adequate space, and were assigned to Barracks 7. Barracks 7 was in the oldest section of the station. The heating systems there were damaged and had never been repaired. Temperatures dropped to near freezing during rest cycles. The beds were hard metal slabs. The lights flickered constantly. It was where sent recruits he wanted to break quickly. The 3 humans walked to their barracks in silence. When they arrived, looked around the small, cold room, and her hands began to shake even more than usual. "This is wrong," she whispered. "The other barracks looked much better." Set his bag on one of the metal beds. "The Instructor is testing us. He wants to see if we will complain." Said nothing. She walked around the small room checking every corner. She found a vent that was releasing cold air and stuffed her extra shirt into it. The room became slightly less cold. "We will need to share body heat during sleep cycles," she said. It was the first time she had spoken since leaving Earth. Her voice was calm and flat. "Push the beds together. We will rotate positions so no one stays on the outside edge for too long." Stared at her. "You are not angry about this?" Looked at her with those empty eyes. "Anger wastes energy. We will need all our energy for what comes next." That night, as the temperature dropped and the lights flickered, the three humans huddled together on their pushed-together beds. It was uncomfortable and cold, but they survived. Far away in his warm office, reviewed his plans for the coming days. He would break the humans. He always broke the recruits. It was simply a matter of finding the right pressure points. He looked at his note about again, the smallest one first. She would crack within a week. He was certain of it. He had never been more wrong about anything in his 40 years of teaching. The first week was designed to destroy them. Had used these methods on many species before. He knew exactly how to make beings suffer without leaving marks that would draw official attention. He started with food. The humans were given half the rations that other recruits received, called it a caloric adjustment protocol. He said humans needed to learn efficiency. The truth was simpler. He wanted them hungry and weak. Noticed the difference on the first day. She watched the other species receive full meals while the humans got small portions that would barely feed a child. Some of the human recruits complained quietly to each other. Did not complain. Instead, she organized. During the second meal, she gathered the 12 humans in a corner of the eating hall. She spoke quietly so no one else could hear. "We will share everything equally. Those who are larger need more food to maintain muscle. Those who are smaller need less. We calculate what each person needs and we divide our portions to match. No one eats more than they need. No one eats less than they must." A large human male named laughed at her. "Who made you the leader, little girl?" Looked at him without expression. "No one. I am not a leader. I am someone who can count. You need approximately 2,500 calories to maintain your body mass. I need 1,600. If we both eat the same small portion, you will weaken faster than me. Then you will fail. Then there will be fewer of us to share food with. Mathematics is not leadership. It is survival." Stopped laughing. The system was implemented that night. Next, attacked their sleep. He scheduled human training during the station night cycle when their bodies wanted to rest. He scheduled their rest periods during the station day cycle when alarms and announcements constantly interrupted sleep. Within 3 days, the humans were exhausted. Adapted again. She taught the others a meditation technique her grandmother had shown her as a child. It was not as good as real sleep, but it helped the body recover faster. She also created a watch rotation. While some humans rested, others stayed awake to warn of surprise inspections or schedule changes. Noticed that the humans were not breaking as fast as expected. This made him angry. He added physical challenges to their daily routine. The obstacle course was designed for soldiers, had 4 legs and could run at 60 kilometers per hour. The course involved climbing walls, sprinting across platforms, and crawling through tunnels. Humans were expected to complete it in full gravity while wearing weighted packs that increased their body weight by 50%. On the first day, every human failed the time requirement, smiled and assigned them extra cleaning duties as punishment. On the second day, finished the course. She did not run where they ran. She found different paths. She crawled under obstacles instead of climbing over them. She used the walls themselves as supports instead of fighting against them. Her time was not fast, but she completed the course within the limit. The other humans watched and learned. By the end of the week, 8 of the 12 could complete the course. The 4 who could not were carried through the hardest sections by their companions. Tried to forbid this teamwork, but there was no rule against it in the official guidelines. During the third week, arranged a combat assessment. Each recruit would fight against a recruit from another species. The matches were supposed to be random, but made sure was matched against. Stood 7 feet tall with 4 arms and natural armor plating across their bodies. They were born warriors bred for combat over thousands of generations. Was considered average for his species, which meant he was terrifying by human standards. The fight took place in a training ring with soft flooring. All recruits were required to watch. Stood at the edge of the ring with his arms crossed over his armored chest. "This assessment measures combat adaptability," he announced. "The match ends when one fighter surrenders or cannot continue. Begin." Charged immediately. His 4 arms swung in patterns that seemed impossible to predict. Dodged the first blow, but the second caught her in the ribs. She flew backward and hit the floor hard. She got up. Attacked again. For 11 minutes was beaten. She was thrown against the walls of the ring. She was slammed into the floor. She was hit so many times that her training uniform became stained with her own blood. But she never stopped moving. She never stopped watching. And she never surrendered. When finally pinned her to the ground with 2 of his arms, she was smiling. It was a thin, strange smile that made even the warrior hesitate for a moment. "You find defeat amusing?" demanded from outside the ring. Looked at him with blood running down her face. "I find information valuable, Instructor." That night in the cold barracks treated injuries with medical supplies she had stolen from the station clinic. Watched in silence for a long time before speaking. "What did you mean about information?" Winced as wrapped her bruised ribs. "Telegraph their attacks. All 4 arms move before their legs do. The rhythm is predictable once you see it enough times. I needed to see it many times. Now I know the pattern." Considered this. "You let him beat you so you could learn how he fights." "I did not let him do anything. He is stronger and faster than me, but strength and speed are not the only things that matter in a fight." She looked at her battered hands. "Humans are not the strongest species. We are not the fastest, but we are very good at learning. That is why we survived our world." In his office, reviewed the footage of the fight. He had expected to be humiliated and broken by the defeat. Instead, she seemed almost satisfied. He did not understand. He was beginning to think he might never understand these strange, small creatures from the deadly planet called Earth. But he refused to accept failure. He would find a way to break them. He had to. 3 months passed on station. The human recruits had lost weight. They had gained scars. They had suffered in ways that would have broken most species in the galaxy, but not a single one of them had quit. Stood in his office staring at the wall. His record was ruined. For 40 years he had maintained a perfect history of breaking at least half of every recruit class. Now 12 small humans from a backwater were making him look like a fool. His superiors had begun asking questions. Why were the humans still training? Why had none of them requested transfer? Why did reports show that they were actually improving faster than recruits from supposedly superior species? Had no good answers. He only had anger. He called to his office on a rest day. The room was kept at temperatures comfortable, for which meant it was extremely hot for humans. Most species began to suffer within minutes of entering. Often used this for interrogations. Walked in and stood at attention. Sweat immediately began forming on her skin. She did not wipe it away. She did not complain. She simply stood and waited. "Your species believes itself exceptional," spoke slowly, walking in a circle around her. "You come from and you think this makes you special. It does not. The galaxy has seen 1,000 species. Most of them destroyed themselves within a century of reaching space. Too much aggression, not enough intelligence." Remained silent. Her face showed nothing despite the heat. "You are no different. You are animals pretending to be soldiers. You survive through stubbornness, not skill. You endure through stupidity, not strength. When the real tests come, you will fail like all the others." Stopped in front of her. He was so tall that she had to tilt her head back to see his face. "Permission to speak, Instructor." Her voice was steady. Waved one of his armored hands. "Speak." "The galaxy has not seen 1,000 species like mine. The galaxy has seen 1,000 species that remind you of mine. But similarity is not sameness. You have decided what we are before learning who we are. That is not intelligence. That is assumption." The words hung in the hot air between them. Felt something he had not felt in decades. He felt challenged, not physically but intellectually. This small human was not just enduring his abuse. She was questioning his judgment. She was suggesting that he, the great instructor, was wrong. He hit her. The blow was calculated. 40 years of experience had taught him exactly how hard to strike without causing permanent damage. His armored fist connected with the side of her head, and she fell to the floor. Blood began flowing from a cut on her forehead. For a long moment stayed down. Then slowly she pushed herself back up. She stood at attention again with blood running down her face and dripping onto the floor of his office. "You think you are brave," leaned close to her. "You think your defiance matters. It does not. You are nothing. Your species is nothing, and I will prove it." He walked back to his desk and sat down. His chair groaned under the weight of his armored body. "Tomorrow you will report to the main combat ring. Full contact. No restrictions. No protective equipment. No time limits. You will face me." Blinked blood out of her eye. Instructor combat against recruits is forbidden by Academy regulations. "Are you refusing?" The question was a trap. If she refused, he would mark her as a coward. If she accepted, she would face an opponent who outweighed her by 300 kilograms and wore natural armor that could stop bullets. "No, Instructor, I am clarifying terms." "The terms are simple. We fight until one of us cannot continue. I will show the entire station what humans truly are: weak, fragile, unworthy. And if I win?" Laughed. It was an ugly sound like metal scraping against stone. "You will not win little, but if by some miracle you are still standing at the end, I will acknowledge that I was wrong about your species. I will say it in front of everyone." Nodded once. "Understood, Instructor, I will be there." She turned and walked out of his office. Her steps were steady despite her injuries. She did not look back. That night in Barracks 7, cleaned the wound on his head while paced back and forth across the small room. "This is insane." His voice was tight with worry. "He is 3 times your size. His body is literally armor. You cannot win this fight." "Probably not." Sat still while worked. "Then why agree? Why not report him for breaking regulations?" "Because he would deny it. He has 40 years of reputation. I have 3 months. No one would believe me." She looked at with calm eyes. "And because this is the only way." "The only way to what? Die?" "The only way to show them." Touched the bandage on her forehead. "Every species on this station thinks humans are a joke. They see our size and they assume weakness. They see our soft skin and they assume fragility. Tomorrow they will see something different." "What will they see?" Smiled. It was the same thin, unsettling smile she had shown in the ring against. "They will see what happens when a stops holding back." Finished the bandage and sat back. Her hands were shaking worse than usual. "He might kill you." "He might," lay back on the hard metal bed, "but he will remember it for the rest of his life, and so will everyone else." She closed her eyes. Within minutes she was asleep, and watched her breathing slowly in the cold room and wondered if they would ever understand this strange, small woman who seemed to fear nothing at all. In his quarters polished his ceremonial helmet. It had been in his family for 6 generations. It had survived plasma fire and blade strikes and the destruction of 3 warships. Tomorrow he would wear it when he crushed the human in front of the entire station. He was looking forward to it. The main combat ring was full. Word had spread through the station like fire through dry grass. A human recruit had challenged senior instructor to unrestricted combat. Or perhaps the instructor had challenged the recruit. The details changed depending on who told the story. The important thing was that everyone wanted to watch. Representatives from 30 different species filled the observation galleries. Betting pools had formed within hours of the announcement. The odds against the human were astronomical. Some bookmakers refused to even take bets on her winning, because it would be like betting that a moon would crash into its planet. Technically possible, but practically absurd. Entered the ring from the east door. She wore her standard training uniform, nothing else. No armor, no padding, no weapons. She looked impossibly small standing alone in the center of the wide circular space. The other 11 humans stood together near the medical station, had prepared emergency supplies, kept calculating the mass difference between and shaking his head. The large human who had once mocked now stood with his fists clenched praying to gods he had not believed in since childhood. Entered from the west door. His ceremonial armor gleamed under the lights. The helmet that had survived 6 generations of warriors covered his head, completely showing only his small dark eyes through a narrow slit. Each step he took shook the floor slightly. He was a mountain of metal and muscle, and he knew it. He stopped 10 meters from and looked down at her. "You may yield at any time." His voice echoed through the silent arena. "There is no shame in recognizing biological inferiority. Surrender now and I will forget this foolishness." Rolled her shoulders loosely. She took a deep breath and let it out slowly. "Begin." Did not hesitate. He charged forward with speed that seemed impossible for his size. His first strike was a sweeping blow aimed at its chest. It would have killed most beings instantly. Was not there. She moved sideways at the last moment, letting the armored fist pass within centimeters of her body. She felt the wind of its passage, but had 40 years of combat experience. His second strike was already coming. It caught in the shoulder and sent her spinning through the air. She hit the ground hard and rolled. She got up. For the next 10 minutes demonstrated why he was considered one of the finest warriors of his generation. His strikes were precise and brutal. He threw into the walls of the ring. He drove her into the floor. He opened cuts on her arms and face and legs. Blood began to stain the mat beneath her feet. The galleries grew quiet. This was not a fight. This was a punishment. Some of the aliens looked away. A few of the weaker species left the observation area unable to watch anymore, but kept getting up. Every time she fell, she rose again. Every time thought she was finished, she stood back up and faced him. Her legs were shaking. Her breath came in ragged gasps. Blood covered half her face, but she would not stay down. At the medical station, suddenly understood what he was seeing. She is not trying to win. His voice was barely a whisper. She is studying him. Looked at him. What do you mean? Every time he hits her, she learns something. She is watching his patterns, memorizing his movements. She is using her own body as a testing ground. In the ring struck again. She flew backward, but this time she twisted in the air and landed on her feet instead of her back. Something had changed. Her movement was different now, more purposeful. Felt a strange sensation in his chest. It took him a moment to recognize it as doubt. He charged again. This time did not try to dodge. She stepped directly into his attack, letting his blow glance off her shoulder while she drove her elbow into a small gap between his chest plate and arm plate. It was a space smaller than a human fist. She hit it perfectly. Staggered, pain flared through his side. No one had found that weakness in 40 years of combat. Unexpected, he steadied himself, but insufficient. He swung at her head, ducked under the blow and struck his knee joint. The armor held, but she had found another weak point. He kicked at her and she rolled away before springing back to her feet. For the next 2 minutes they circled each other, was more careful now. He had underestimated her. He would not make that mistake again. He attacked in a combination that had ended hundreds of fights. A high strike to draw attention, A low sweep to remove her feet, a finishing blow as she fell. Saw it coming. She had been hit by similar combinations for the past 12 minutes. She had learned. When the high strike came, she dropped low. When the sweep came, she jumped over it. And as overextended from his own momentum, she gathered every ounce of strength in her battered body and drove her fist upward. She aimed for the temple of his helmet. It was where 3 plates met. It was the weakest point on his ancestral armor. She had seen it flexing slightly every time he turned his head. She had been watching for 11 minutes and 53 seconds for this exact moment. Her fist connected. The sound was like a bell being struck. A crack appeared on the helmet. It spiderwebbed outward from the impact point, spreading across the faceplate like frozen lightning. Stumbled backward, clutching his head. The helmet that had survived plasma fire and blade strikes and centuries of combat had been damaged by a human woman who weighed 50 kilograms. The galleries erupted. Aliens who had been betting against screamed in disbelief. Species who had dismissed humans as weak stared with their various eyes wide open. The representatives sat in stunned silence. This was impossible. This could not be happening. Touched his cracked helmet. Through his damaged faceplate, he stared at the small, bloody human standing before him. She was barely able to stand. Her right hand was clearly broken from the impact, but she was still on her feet. And she was smiling. Station security rushed into the ring before either fighter could continue. The match was declared invalid due to its unofficial nature. Was escorted out surrounded by his own kind who did not know what to say to him. Collapsed as soon as reached her side. But the damage was done, not to though her injuries were severe. The damage was to everything the galaxy had believed about humans. The footage would spread across 1,000 worlds within days, and nothing would ever be the same again. The medical bay was quiet except for the soft beeping of machines. Lay on a bed designed for species much larger than humans. Tubes connected her to devices that pumped healing compounds into her bloodstream. Her right hand was wrapped in regenerative bandages. The doctors said she had fractured 4 bones when her fist hit the helmet. Sat beside her bed. She had not left since was brought in. Was it worth it? Asked quietly when finally opened her eyes. Turned her head slowly and looked at her bandaged hand. Ask me in a week. The inquiry began 3 days later. Station administrators reviewed footage of the fight. They interviewed witnesses from a dozen species. They examined his damaged helmet. They studied her extensive injuries. The conclusion was simple. Had violated Academy regulations by engaging in unrestricted combat with a recruit. His methods over the previous 3 months were deemed counterproductive to Alliance cohesion. He was removed from his position effective immediately. Accepted the judgment in silence. He had not spoken since the fight. Some said he was humiliated. Others said he was simply trying to understand what had happened. How a creature half his size with no armor and no weapons had damaged something his family had protected for 6 generations. The footage spread faster than anyone expected. Within a week, it had reached every major world in the Alliance. Within a month, it had become the most watched combat recording in galactic history. Species that had dismissed humans as merely another species watched the video over and over. They saw a small female absorb punishment that would have killed most beings. They saw her rise again and again when she should have stayed down. They saw her study her opponent even while being beaten nearly to death. And they saw her find the one weakness in centuries-old armor through nothing but observation and determination. Suddenly, humans were no longer a joke. Suddenly, humans were something to be studied and respected, and perhaps feared. Spent 2 weeks recovering. The regenerative technology of the Alliance was advanced, but even it could only work so fast. She used the time to read reports and answer questions from investigators. She never complained about her injuries. She never asked for special treatment. When she finally returned to training, the other recruits looked at her differently. Not just the humans, but aliens from dozens of species. They stepped aside when she walked past. They nodded to her in the hallways. A warrior twice her size actually bowed when she entered the eating hall. 3 months later, graduated at the top of her class. Her scores in combat adaptation, tactical thinking, and endurance testing were the highest ever recorded for a human. Some said they were the highest ever recorded for any species, but the Academy refused to confirm this officially. Was recruited by Alliance Intelligence. His quiet nature and ability to observe without being noticed made him perfect for the work. Was offered a position developing trauma protocols for multi-species medical teams. Her experience treating humans under impossible conditions had given her insights that alien doctors lacked. On graduation day, all 12 humans stood together one final time. They had entered the academy as strangers. They left as something closer to family. A young approached as she prepared to board her transport. He was barely past his first molting, still young by the standards of his long-lived species. He looked nervous. "You fought Instructor." His voice was uncertain. "I did. My clutchmates say you cheated. They say no human could damage armor without weapons. They say you must have hidden something in your hand." Considered the young alien for a long moment. Then she held up her right hand. The scars from her fractures were still visible despite the regenerative treatment. "Your clutchmates are welcome to test that theory themselves," she smiled. It was the same thin, unsettling smile she had worn in the ring. "I have gotten better since then." The young backed away quickly. Later, as the transport prepared to leave, asked the question that had bothered him since the fight. "How did you know about the weak point in his helmet? You aimed directly for it. You must have known." Looked out the viewport at the stars. Station grew smaller behind them. Soon it would be just another light in the endless darkness. "I did not know." Her voice was calm. "Not until I hit it." "Then why aim there?" "Because I had aimed everywhere else first. For 12 minutes I hit every part of his body I could reach. I watched how each section responded. I felt for flexibility and weakness. The temple was the last place I had not tested." Shook his head slowly. "You used your own body as an experiment. You let him beat you just to gather data. Our world spent 4 billion years trying to kill us." Turned away from the viewport to face him. "It threw predators at us and we learned to hunt them. It sent diseases and we learned to cure them. It created disasters and we learned to survive them. We did not win by being the strongest things on our planet. We won by being the most stubborn students in the universe." She touched the viewport with her hand. Her reflection ghosted over distant galaxies. "Every time something knocked us down, we got back up and asked what we could learn from the experience. Every time we failed, we studied the failure until we understood how to succeed. That is what never understood. He thought he was punishing me. He was actually teaching me everything I needed to know to beat him." Who had been listening quietly spoke up. "And now, what happens next?" "Now we take what we have learned and we show the galaxy who we really are." Sat back in her seat as the transport accelerated toward their first assignment. Not the strongest, not the fastest, not the most advanced, just the most persistent students in existence. Smiled, humanity first year. Closed her eyes. The scars on her hand ached slightly as they always would. She did not mind. They were proof of what she had learned. Every year, she settled into her seat for the long journey ahead. Always. Behind them, station disappeared into the infinite darkness. Ahead of them waited a galaxy that was only beginning to understand what humans could do. The lesson had been taught. The galaxy would remember it for a very long time.